Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Former swimmer Sharron Davies, MBE, is a British icon and role model. After an outstanding career winning medals for Great Britain at the Olympics and other major events, she went on to have a hugely successful career as a broadcaster, and she now stands centre stage as a forthright advocate for women in sport. Her new book is Unfair Play, and she joins me now. Sharron Davies, welcome to the show. So, Sharron, tell me about your book. Hello. Tell me about your book. Why have you written this book and what is it about?
Well, it's about the battle for women's sport. And it's not just about the battle we have right now. It's about the battle that we've always had. Even Kutubitan, who, set up the modern Olympic Games, didn't want women in the Olympics. So it's all these years of battling, and still we have nowhere near parity. Of course we don't. We're working on it. We're getting better. But, for example, in the UK, there's 1,000 women that earn their living from sport. There's 11,000 men. And in American advertising terms, and the UK is pretty similar, women get 1% of the US sponsorship dollar in the States from sport and 4% of the airtime. So we have this tiny piece of the cake already, and now we're supposed to move over for mediocre male athletes who identify as being female. And my issue is nothing to do with not wanting them involved in sport. I want everyone involved in sport. I spent my whole life promoting sport and wanting people to be sporty and fit and healthy. However, I really believe that females are worthy of fair sport just the same as males, and they should have their own spaces.
And of course, Sharron, you've had direct experience of the unfairness that comes about from drug-enhanced participation in sport. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest reason why I'm so outspoken. For 20 years, my generation, and in fact the generation afterwards as well, had to compete against East Germans that were filled full of synthetic testosterone during the 70s and the 80s. And for 20 years, the IOC did absolutely nothing to stop this, to the extent where they totally and utterly dominated women's sport in swimming, rowing, track and field in particular. I mean, swimming, the dominance was so ridiculous. They took 92% of all the women's medals during that period at the European Championships. At my Olympics, they had 6 podiums, 1, 2, 3, where they won practically no medals in the men's whatsoever. And they would have, female athletes that would turn up at competitions that we'd never seen before, that would break a world record and we'd never see again. So it was so obvious, it was ridiculous, and nothing was done. And so I had friends that came forth behind 3 East Germans whose whole lives would have been different if they'd been Olympic champions. And I just could not sit back and watch the same thing potentially happen all over again.
And in elite sport, of course, those few seconds here and there that people train endlessly to shave off their time, that makes all the difference, doesn't it? It's really, really important for athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we win Olympic titles by hundredths of a centimetre the length of your fingernails, and we're training, 5-6 hours a day for 10, 12 years of our lives for that. And it's so insulting to say that women should just train harder. I was doing all those years ago, 6 hours a day. I was training as hard, if not harder, than anyone I was in the pool with. When I was 11, I fell out of a tree and broke both my arms. They were in plasters for 3 months. My dad just wrapped them in plastic bags, and I carried on and I trained. So, wow. We worked very, very hard. It was extremely frustrating. I mean, we are different. We're made differently. Females and males are made to do different things. Small gamete, large gamete. There's no human in history ever that's had both. The human hermaphrodite does not exist. Even athletes that are DSD, which is the insulting term intersex is constantly used by trans activists, some form of gotcha, are still male and female. So, I would like to see sex screening come back again, which was removed by the IOC, even though 98% of females said they wanted to carry on.
Do you think, though, that things are improving insofar as when we saw Leah Thomas, the swimmer, a trans-identified male who decided to compete against women, suddenly towering over these other women on the podium, that image, I think, woke up a lot of people to the problem, didn't it?
Yeah, and that was what I was trying to avoid in a way. I was trying to stop there having to be a Leah Thomas in every single sport before people went, oh, guess what? Males are stronger than females. We have every single record ever set from the last 100 years to show that there's a difference of between 10 to 30% in Olympic sport. So 30% being explosive events like weightlifting, 10% being things like middle distance running, and swimming is usually about 11 and 12%. And that's stayed pretty much the same the whole time. The only glitch where there was a little glitch where that got a little bit closer was during that East German era, surprise, surprise. And now that's gone back to the same again. It's gone back to 11, 12%. So, Michael Phelps was not beating his rivals by 11%. He was beating them by less than 1%. And he now holds no world records whatsoever, which is another gotcha. And that last world record went by a 6-foot Frenchman who's about half his size. So, males and females are just built extremely differently, and we have to be able to use the equipment that we've got. And every piece of study we've got, the world over, shows that we can't remove male puberty advantage. And that doesn't even talk about things like Q angles or height and the size of hands and feet. And if you look at the FA in the UK for the moment, we've got 50 trans-identifying males in the women's game, and a large proportion of those are in goal. Because there's a very big advantage to being in goal. They're explosive, they have the height, and they have the hand size. So it's just basically unfair, because what's happening is we're not including these people, we're excluding females from their own sport. So, either we have to add categories, or we have to create an open category, which is what World Aquatics has done.
It's quite astonishing, isn't it? Because the 99% of people will automatically understand what you're saying and automatically see that this is grossly unfair. But here you are, you've written a book about it, you're having to talk about it. Do you ever get frustrated that you're having to make these arguments to people when really it's just common sense?
Yeah, I get very frustrated that our governing bodies are not standing up for females. That's the thing I just cannot understand after all of this time and all the work we've had on equality. They just have no backbone with regards to doing the right thing. So if they poll their members, we get huge support. So for recently, British Rowing polled their members eventually after a lot of cajoling and a lot of trying to get them to do that for many years. And 80% of their members came back and said, no, we want fair sport. You need to prioritise fair sport. And then we need to find ways to be inclusive. Everybody wants to be inclusive, but they want fair first. They want safety. In contact sports is absolutely vital, or a young female's going to lose their life potentially, or certainly end up in a wheelchair or something horrendous with a contact sport like rugby. Then we need to have fairness, and then we need to find ways to be inclusive. And we can be inclusive. I was listening to your conversation earlier, and we have other issues as well. We have, for example, Leah Thomas, a 6'4" male with full male genitalia, who for months forces girls to change next to them, having announced that they were a lesbian, and these girls were then instructed to go to see psychologists when they had a problem with this. And then when they said they had a problem together, they were then told they would be struck off the team. So to me, that's a form of abuse, to make a young teenage girl change next to a 6'4" male for months on end.
Yeah, it's a very serious issue. Well, your book is called Unfair Play. It's out now, available for people to buy. Sharron Davies, thank you ever so much for joining us today on the show.